Yes, order.
As long as the order.
Bye, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here. I'm calling us to order. Welcome to the December meeting of the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission. And we are, Priscilla, happy holidays. I have which I will pass around. Because I think it's been a good year. We'll talk about our annual report later, and we'll talk about our exciting work plan for next year. For now, we're very lucky and privileged to have Tenley Peterson, Chair of the Planning Commission. You know, we do all this work on SPRCs, but it's nothing compared to what the Planning Commission does, and all of our work goes to the Planning Commission. So Tenley, I'd love it if you would introduce yourself a little bit more than that, but also tell us how can we help you more, and what can we do to work with you better? Because the planning, you guys rock. It takes a lot to be on the Planning Commission, so thank you for all that you do.
Well, happy to be here, Tenley Peterson, current chair of the Planning Commission, but we do one-year terms as chair. So I am rolling off as chair at the end of the month, and will be our new chair is Commissioner Nia Bagley, who has been on the commission for a long time too. So you all probably know her and have worked with her. Nia and I actually both have been on the Planning Commission since 2019. We were both appointed at the same time. So about 6 years. During that time, I was chair, vice chair, and also for many years, chair of the SPRC Site Plan Review Subcommittee. So worked a lot with representatives from C2E2. And then currently for 2026, I'll be the chair of the LRPC, the Long Range Planning Committee, which we'll talk about in the presentation. Before I was on Planning Commission, I served for 8 years on the Budget Commission, Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission. And I know you all are familiar with the budget process because you probably get involved with that every spring. So yeah, looking at the big picture budget, how we're spending our money, how we could do better. So
yeah, that's been interesting.
Yes, it was definitely. But I feel like Planning Commission is really helpful because we have so many more meetings, but we actually get to work into in the weeds of all of the projects that we look at, which means we actually get the chance to make improvements to projects, which I really enjoy. With how much time we all put into these commissions, getting to actually see a change happen before your very eyes is really motivating. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So I'll talk about the background of the Planning Commission, the comp plan update that is going on right now. We're kind of coming to the end of phase 1 and then looking at commercial market resiliency initiative. Go to the next slide. And next slide. Okay, so the Planning Commission was established by the state of Virginia. Well, the Arlington's Planning Commission was established in the 1950s. Arlington has like more than 50 commissions and advisory boards. The Planning Commission is the only one that is required by the state of Virginia to exist. So every community must have a Planning Commission whose job it is to advise the county board or the leadership on the orderly development and equitable development of the county. So we advise the county board, but in Arlington, we also lead the community engagement process where we look at site plans, bring the community together, talk about ways that we could improve it, check to make sure that they align with our various plans, whether it's the community energy plan, forestry and natural resources plan, or individual area plans that the community has also come together at an earlier point to kind of set an idea of what the community should look like. Any planning commission in Virginia can have up to 15 members. We currently have 11 in Arlington. And we have a variety of different backgrounds. We've had people who are really into biophilia. We have people who are really into affordable housing. We have members who care a lot about EV charging stations and buildings. We have members who have a lot of general like I came more of as a generalist looking at the budget as my background. We do have 3 committees that I mentioned earlier. The Long Range Planning Committee, which looks, and we'll talk more about that, but that's kind of like the big picture ideas and policies for the county. We have ZOCO, which looks at the individual zoning policies, and then SPRC, which is our site plans, and that's where you all have often gotten involved. It's a little bit inaccurate to say we hold meetings monthly. So we have hearings monthly. That can be 1, 2, 3 meetings. At the beginning of this month, we had 3 hearings, which was about 8 hours, which actually was less than the county board, I think, had 9 hours on Saturday at their meeting. But so we did 3.
Close.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Susan Cunningham told me that she thanked you guys. And she was like, I can't believe how much time you're spending. So
Yes.
thank you.
But usually we don't have 3 hearings. Only twice this year have we had 3 hearings in 1 month. Usually we have 1 hearing. And then in addition to our monthly hearing, we have like 2 to 4 subcommittee meetings, which could be our SPRC, LRPC, DOCO. And yeah, we must provide the recommendations on these various projects. We can go to the next slide.
Just real quick on that, going back to the committees. So you say you have 11 members. Do you have overlap, like somebody will be on LPRC and SOCO?
Yes, so we have a chair for each one of our committees. So I'm currently the chair of the Long Range Planning Committee. I was the chair of the Site Plan Review Committee. But so each committee has a chair, and then that chair will oversee projects. Usually, so every planning commissioner is a member of the subcommittees. And for our site plan review committees, each project will have a separate chair. So I was the chair of the subcommittee, but then for a specific project, Melwood, for example, I think Commissioner Berkey was in charge of that project.
So just to clarify it again, so all 11, is there any for outside the 11 that joined the subcommittees?
Yes. So why don't we go to the next slide? I'll kind of talk. So for LRPC, we look at, those are the big picture policies and like area plans, comp plan updates, phase site development plans, like River House. So if we were looking at the Langston Boulevard area plan. So Langston Boulevard, like the folks who lived along that corridor were saying, you know, we want an area plan. We want to see, we want to re-envision on what this Langston Boulevard looks like. So they worked with the Planning Commission to come up with a new plan for the area. So the Planning Commission would go out and say, okay, we need representatives from all the various relevant commissions. Then we'll go out to all of the civic associations. We'll go out to, you know, major business groups that are along the corridor. We'll reach out to residents, and we'll kind of bring all of these groups together to have these conversations that I think for that plan, it was like years in the making. The community got together like 10 years ago with the idea to do it. And then I think the Planning Commission involved for like 3 years. So yes, so whenever we're doing these big projects, the Planning Commission and staff will do the work to like bring everybody together, host the meetings where we are often in this room, setting the agenda, kind of building consensus with the people in the room, helping to provide feedback to staff on what should the plan look like. So yeah, so that's LRPC. So if you go to the next one, so zoning committee, that is made up of the 11 planning commissioners. And that's where we looked at policies like expanded housing options, where we looked at the policies to do our adaptive reuse projects to say, let's take our empty commercial buildings and repurpose them for residential uses. So that's where we did the work to kind of come up with those new policies. And then the next one, so the site plan review committee, that's another opportunity where we often work with this commission as well as several other commissions in the community. So if somebody comes forward and says, you know, Amazon is moving to the area, they want to build a project. Here's what they're looking at. Here's what they want to do. They've submitted their site plan. Then the planning commission will work with staff to first hold an online engagement period where anybody in the community can submit feedback. You know, whether it's like 30 comments to hundreds of comments, then the planning commission and staff will work together to kind of go through the comments and say, here are the common trends that we see from that feedback. Let's put together our main agenda items, and then we host 2 meetings. They're public meetings, but they're for the members of the site plan review committee. And then we just, you know, get a presentation from staff, get a presentation from the applicant, and then just talk about like, what do we think about the sustainability of the project? What do we think about the land use of the project? What do we think about the density? What do we think about the architecture? And so those conversations take place over two plus meetings. Generally, we try to get them done in 2 unless there's something really controversial. And then the project will go to the county board. It goes to the planning commission and then the county board for review and approval. And the planning commission votes, but we don't vote on whether or not the project happens. We just vote on our advice to the board, and then it goes to the board, and then the board, their action is legally binding.
Is that advice to the board like yes or no, or is it much more nuanced and there's a detailed letter that explains?
Yeah, there's usually like a 3 to 5 page report where it goes over the specific recommendations that are based on like the county manager's recommendations to the board. So the county manager has his recommendations, and then we say like, yes, we agree with that. Yes, we agree with that. But then we'll also say, well, like with River House recently, we were concerned that there was part of the green ribbon, which is like the really verdant biophilic trail that goes through Pentagon City. It like went up a hill and then just kind of stopped. And we were like, we don't think it should stop. It's like a trail to nowhere. So some of our specific advice was, no, you need to do better. Like we do not think that you should just leave the trail like that. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So a big project that Planning Commission is working with staff on right now is the comprehensive plan. So all communities will have a comprehensive plan. Our original one was put together in the 1960s. Originally it included 5 elements. Now it has 12 elements. And this year, county staff has been working on an introductory chapter. So within the 12 elements, each one kind of was put together independently. And oftentimes when we were working on a site plan or an area plan, we found that there were conflicting priorities sometimes, or sometimes plans kind of like were against each other. So we wanted to come up with an introductory chapter that would look at how should all these elements be thought about together? How can we, when we are making updates to each individual element, what are the themes that our community cares about the most that should be reflected in these different elements? Slide. Yeah, so it was going to incorporate emerging priorities and unaddressed issues, talk about how the elements would relate to one another. So go to the next slide. The introductory chapter first looked at the American Planning Association's guiding principles about how any community should kind of be thinking about big picture comp plans. Then we included stuff that is specific to Arlington County, whether it's like our community energy plan and kind of climate crisis issues or housing issues and housing crisis issues. So we kind of brought those in, and then looking at the individual elements that we have already identified as priorities for the community. Slide.
So Rob, that's the process that you're our rep on.
And so here's kind of the timeline for phase 1. So we're kind of coming to the end of phase 1. So first they kind of did some workshops in 2024. Then the first half of this year, they were doing focus groups. They had online feedback. Then in the fall, they had community meetings, pop-up events, another online survey. So now they're at the stage where they are putting together all of the feedback that they got, trying to come up with the common trends and themes. And then they'll put together the draft chapter and then workshop that around with the various commissions and get feedback on it. And then once they kind of have, the county board has approved the introductory chapter, then any subsequent comp plan elements that get updated will kind of use that as the guidance. So there had been conversation to work on the general land use plan, the PLUP, and that's kind of what the Planning Commission uses as one of our big picture guiding documents when making recommendations for if a site plan or a project is or a policy is appropriate for the community. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, next slide. And then commercial market rate resiliency or commercial market resiliency initiative. So this is one project that the Planning Commission had been working on for a year plus. Last fall, we approved the policy that would make it more streamlined to convert empty commercial buildings into residential units. And since we approved it a year ago, we have seen 4 projects, I think, with a 5th one in the works. So here's the Planning Division's work plan related to commercial market resiliency initiative. I think since the pandemic, we all know the economy has kind of flipped upside down, and we are still in the process of adapting a lot of our policies to be responsive to that. So we talked about the adaptive reuse, and I'll talk a little bit more than that. We also updated in our zoning committee parking ratios. A lot of the parking policies were kind of created in the 1960s when they assumed that everybody would have a car and that there weren't a lot of alternatives. And so we have been working to update those. In particular, one of them was, this was like more than a year ago, but there was a policy that said if you are at a health center, you must have more parking than you would for a shopping center. And you couldn't have as much compact parking because seniors would need the health services and they couldn't deal with compact parking. So a lot of it was like kind of insulting policies. So we kind of got rid of those. We've allowed, especially with Land Langston Boulevard, shared parking and offsite parking to be able to be counted when we're looking at approving a project. Let's see, we also did some signage updates in our zoning. We're trying to make the process for site plan approvals and making edits to projects that have already been approved be a little bit simpler, so that when a project, if a project is changing and there's an impact to the community, then the planning commission should be involved and there should be a public process to review it. If it's something that isn't really an impact to the community, then that could be an administrative change. And so they're kind of going through the policies and seeing where we could identify more administrative changes. And let's see, slide. Yeah, so we've seen 4 projects that the Planning Commission has reviewed and approved since we passed the adaptive use policy last year. That has resulted in more than 500 residential units that have come online and 344 hotel rooms. We have another project, 1800 South Bell Street and 1901 South Bell Street, that's currently under consideration. But so far we had a 24% vacancy rate, and with the projects that have recently been approved, we've decreased that by 2%. Still very high. We still need to keep doing work, but that we're encouraged by that. And I think that's the last slide. So I'll say you all have been very consistently involved with the site plan review process and special glove studies. We are very appreciative of that. As I mentioned, each planning commissioner, we all have our backgrounds and our expertise in various areas, but you all have a lot of very specific expertise that we really rely on. So every commission that comes to the table, we're able to benefit so much from you all looking at a project and saying, like, here are the areas of concern, like, please focus on that. And so the report card that you all do is very helpful to me, especially like across projects. I know a lot of times like people are only getting in the 60s and 70s, but then when we see a project that's like 85%, we're like, wow, like maybe compared to the community energy plan, we're not like at 100% yet, but we know because other projects were like 59% that like this one is relatively good. We can still encourage the applicant to do better. But that the report card is very helpful. I'll also add, because we're a Dillon Rule state, generally we have to use more carrots compared to sticks when we are asking applicants to do things. That's why we have the Green Building Incentive Program to reward applicants with extra density if they do things that are good for the environment. And you all know we just recently approved an update to that, which will take effect this spring. So we are hoping to see better buildings, but also more uptick in projects that want to take advantage of that program. Yeah, so happy to answer questions, happy to.
Start out with big picture stuff.
First.
So I got 2. So you've been very complimentary just now about the help that we've given, but how can we do better? How can our reviews or C2E2 letters or checklist or whatever attendees at the meetings, how can we improve and make it more valuable? Sand off the corners or whatever in any way to assist with it.
Well, so I will say
Be
first,
honest, no,
no, I mean, you guys are really good because you have the report card. And I think the report card was like new as of like 3 years ago.
That's right.
Um,
22.
Yeah, and so because you have the report card, each person that comes to the SPRC meeting is fairly consistent in the feedback that they're presenting. Whereas over the time that I've been on the commission, it kind of depends on who shows up to the meeting. Not just this commission, but any commission. Like if you were to show up, maybe your personal interests are something versus you. So the report card allows for pretty consistent feedback. I will also say though, consensus building is really important. So the chair of the SPRC is really looking for, when you say at a meeting, you know, we think the following three things are important. If then you speak up and say, actually, I really like the C2E2's comment. Like, I agree with that. And then you also say, I agree with that too. So then the chair is like writing that down, like 3 people in the room thought this was important. So if you are talking to other members of the SPRC, and you can find areas of overlap where somebody's, you know, the housing commission cares deeply about something and you guys care deeply about something, looking for like the mutual interest. And then the two of you together are saying that. And then planning commissioners, you know, we all care about the community energy plan and climate change issues. So I think we're going to also support that. In general, coming to the conversation with like actionable feedback is really helpful for the developer or the planning commissioner to say, you know, if we say, oh, we want bird-friendly glass, more bird-friendly glass. Well, what does more mean? Like we want bird-friendly glass to 38 feet because that is how tall we are projecting that the tree that is next to the building is going to go. And therefore the birds who are going to be sitting in that tree need the glass to go that high. So that's really helpful to actually like make the solution happen.
Yeah, that's great. So second question. So one of the things that we have put in a letter about the GBIP was we think that the basic baseline site plan conditions need to be upgraded, improved and heightened. But that's not the responsibility of the AIR team or the climate policy office. So we don't really have a window to get into staff to try to make that happen. We've had vague conversations with a couple of board members like, oh yeah, I'll see what I can do. But I don't know that it has started. I don't know how to get that all rolling. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so standard site plan conditions are updated every few years by planning staff. They generally do reach out to interested parties when they are looking at making those updates. But if you are consistently in SPRC meetings, if when you're providing your feedback, or somebody is promising something, you can ask the question, is that a standard site plan condition? If you use that phrase, and I think it should be a standard site plan condition. So if staff keep hearing that, and then planning commissioners keep hearing that, and so Nia Bagley was the SPRC committee chair for the last couple of years. I don't know if she will continue to be since she's chairing the full commission. But if you know who the future person is, you could also reach out to them so that when that person is talking to staff, when it kind of comes time to do standard site plan conditions again, they can point out like, hey, remember we wanted to strengthen the following policies. I know Forestry and Natural Resources Commission for several years were saying, making requests for the 4.1 process. And they kind of, for several years, like this needs to be improved, this needs to be improved. And then when it came time to make those improvements, like that was incorporated in there. And so I think the echo chamber, I think just like the drumbeat of advice, with government and bureaucracy, sometimes change can take a while, but having the drumbeat and the echo chamber, I think.
Can I ask a more direct approach might be, is there somebody on the planning staff that we could reach out to formally or informally, or even just send a copy of our GBIP letter and highlight the paragraph that says, yeah, is that?
Yeah.
We don't know
Matt Pfeiffer.
Matt?
Yeah.
You spell that?
MATT.
Great, thank you so much.
Look forward to the letter, Matt. I have a couple of questions too. You mentioned adaptive reuse, and one of the things that we found is that because there's no SPRC and because they're providing expedited, shorter documentation, that we've struggled to, first one we looked at, our person, our commissioner, building, because it's like exploring, looking for what the systems were and what they might be, which seemed like a desperate, Hail Mary to figure out what's going on. Are you finding that you have enough information about them? So we haven't been able to do a full analysis. We haven't been able to complete our scorecard of the adaptive reuse, but we understand that these projects are important and that they're being expedited. So we understand, but are you getting enough information?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when the process was first proposed, the idea was that it was so administrative because really they were just going to be changing the use and making interior modifications that it wouldn't even go to the planning commission. It would just go straight to the board. And then after they approved it, they were like, you know what, we do want some planning commission review. We do want the community to have an opportunity to weigh in. So that's when they started coming to us. But we don't have the subcommittee meetings. It just comes straight to us. I mean, we've been encouraged that we saw 4 projects in the last year.
Yeah.
And have lowered the office vacancy rate by 2% once those projects come online. It also makes me wonder, like other communities like DC and Montgomery County also have adaptive reuse policies. Theirs are more work for an applicant to like go through the process. So we have seen more projects. So we've kind of looked at it like it's a balance addressing what we kind of think of as like a crisis, that there's so much empty commercial space that's unuseful, and an empty building has like a really negative streetscape experience. It's not activated at night, and so there can be safety concerns. There's missed tax revenue. So the fact that it is an adaptive reuse project at all has a lot of environmental benefits.
Yes.
And so we kind of said, like, as of right now, we are okay with the process. That doesn't mean, I mean, we are kind of constantly looking at like, is this the right thing? Should we look at making some changes? We did get some community feedback that they felt like they weren't here, like the site plan review committee meetings, generally the applicant and staff will come and like explain in very simple terms, like, here's what the project is, here are some nice pictures, here are the concerns, what do you think? When you are looking at a 4.1 application or this adaptive reuse application, they're very dense, like written for urban planners and architects. So the community was like, we need someone to come and explain this to us. So you don't need like a PhD in urban planning to like understand the projects. And so we have intentionally tried to make the projects more accessible. But yeah, I think it is an ongoing question of like, do we want to slow down the process so we can do more investigation, or do we just address the issue?
Right.
And the fact that these are conversions, and therefore there aren't a lot of issues to mitigate, since usually like parking is the same or similar, just maybe different times of day. There's usually not more density because the building shape is the same. There'll be more people in it in the evenings, but maybe during the workday too, if people are working from home. But yeah, no, it's a fair question.
Yeah, it is really interesting. So my second question is, so we send a letter, and we, and then sometimes we come and testify and sometimes we don't. And sometimes it's a hassle to show up, and there's a lot of people signed up, and it's hard to figure out when the timing should be. So, but do you find that it makes a difference if we're there?
Yes, it makes a big difference if you're there. Not necessarily in person, you can join via Zoom. But you all are pretty good about getting us the letters several days in advance. But a lot of times we get letters at like, 3 p.m. on the day of the hearing. And I think all of the planning commissioners have full-time jobs. So if we get letters the day of, we're not going to be able to give it the same amount of attention as if we get it several days in advance, but also having somebody come in person and looking at the people sitting at the dais and saying, this is something we care about, like, and especially if it's like somebody that we, Dr. Byrne like comes every subcommittee meeting,
Yeah.
and so like it really makes a difference. Like we see him and like you care so much about the community, and like commissioners now are asking questions like, do you have common milkweed on your site? Like, we need the butterfly habitat. So.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because I know I've said, it's optional, but it's great to hear. And in the interest of full disclosure, I asked Susan Cunningham the same question. She gave me the same answer. It makes a big difference even if you send a letter, you show up at the county board. So that's something that we'll all have to think about. So other questions, potentially, Rob?
Sure.
One comment, one question, then maybe one request too. So comment, first of all, thanks for the presentation and for all you guys do. And we think this is a lot of work sometimes, but you guys have like a lot of work. So I really appreciate the time you dedicate to this. The question is just, this is a simple one, just built off Doug's comment on the site plan conditions. From what I remember, it's like 60 or 80 pages, but there were like sections. So are they severable so that they can be updated at different times? Or is there like this 3-year cycle where we're doing all of it together and updating it all at once? So if we're ready to update site plan conditions this year, let's just do those 8 pages on the environmental piece. And then when the other things are ready, or if they need to be updated, they can do that. Is that possible?
I don't know that it's practicable. Because it's usually like an item in the work plan. And so it'll be Matt's job to like look at the site plan conditions holistically and go out to the various stakeholders and have the conversation. And so if we were changing piecemeal things without the ability to like get feedback from everybody, yeah.
It's not just the stakeholders, it seems to me it's the other departments too, even in the county, right? If there's different, aside from the planning department, there's other departments that get impacted by these site plan conditions. So if you're updating different sections, then you have to get approvals from different departments. But to me, it just seemed like you could take a chunk out and just go, okay, well, we're talking about, just the green building stuff, and let's talk to that stakeholder community and the relevant commissions and just do those 8 pages. It seems like it's doable, but maybe if there's an internal process that doesn't allow that to happen.
Yeah, I think the existing process wouldn't allow that to happen, but it's worth reaching out to Nina. And I think updates to standard site plan conditions might be on the 2026 work plan. So check that out. We will be going over the work plan at our February meeting. I'll also say when I was chair of the SPRC committee, I had a monthly meeting where we went over the site plan conditions, the standard site plan conditions. And we took this like 10-page document, and Matt Pfeiffer, like, number 1, here's the policy. This is what it means. Number 2, here's the policy, and like went through the whole thing. And so it's like a 2-hour meeting. But if you're interested in what those site plans are, circa like 2021 or 2022, you could watch that meeting because it was recorded. And we didn't get through all of them, but we got through like 90% of them before the 2 hours ended.
The final request, and other commissioners can back me up on this. The one thing that makes it really hard for us to give you that scorecard, we don't always get the full sustainability documentation in time. So I would love for you guys to change a policy that says, hey, if you don't have this full sustainability documentation, we're not looking at it until you give us that process would be great. Because then we're actually saying the process is driving the results, right? Your sustainability homework, give me everything so that these guys can fill out their scorecard. Then we'll hold the first meeting, right? Sometimes we don't get to sustainability documentation, or we get partial, and then we're at the tail end of the second meeting, and then we're running out of time, and then, right? So we can really flip that around. That would be, that's the dream requests for, sorry if I'm out of line with that one, Cindy. That's the one that I think would help all of us out.
How much time do you need?
Not much, once we have the documentation. I mean, whoever's, like us, we get assigned to different projects, and whoever is the lead on that project, or 2 people, whatever, once they have the sufficient documentation, you can do the scorecard and do a draft letter in a day or 2, right? If you have all of that information, but lots of times we're scrounging around the website and looking for different pieces, right?
Interesting, like the car. I had to write they didn't have anything about sustainability. And I had to write a letter identifying every different element of the checklist, asking for responses. So if they knew in advance that these were the types of things that we needed to know or wanted to know, then hopefully they would be responsive in the first instance instead of us having to chase them. So I don't know, maybe should we be clearer about our expectations?
Yeah, we've talked about that, about how to get developers more familiar with the scorecard, but a lot of them, we've been using it for 3 years. As Tim
Yeah.
said. A lot of them have seen it before, they just don't necessarily care.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the impression you get sometimes, but at least like say some expectation that we encourage them to respond to these kind of elements, these.
So I
Very
think
strange.
during the online comment period, you could post those questions in the form. And then before, like when the first meeting is announced, you could follow up with whoever the chair is and the staff contact and say, we submitted the following number of questions. I mean, what is it, 15 questions or 20 questions? We are hoping for these questions to be addressed before the agenda item comes up, and the chair gets to decide if it's the first meeting or the second meeting when sustainability comes up. I feel like usually it's the second meeting.
It is usually the
Yeah.
second meeting.
So when you go to the first meeting, like just say, hey, we submitted questions
Right.
and we are hoping for answers to those questions before we have the next meeting.
Yeah, and that's basically what you did.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
but
And
you
they did
still didn't
respond.
get, okay.
They
yeah.
still responded.
In
I mean, they
time
did
for you to
respond
get-
in time. The responses were pretty sad, but they did respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for all this process, and how to work on the process. Other questions? Joe?
The planning commission, I saw like you were replacing a commissioner and you were looking for certain experience within that. Could you kind of explain how the makeup is with the commission? Are you looking for everyone just with architecture experience, or are there specialized expertise within each one of those roles?
Yeah, so there's not like a commissioner who's experienced in X and a commissioner who's experienced in Y. A lot of times, so for me, when I was looking for commissioners this year, we had a couple of empty spots. I noticed that there was a gap for architectural expertise on the commission. So I was specifically doing recruiting on experience with architecture, experience with biophilia, experience with sustainability issues. Those were I'm trying to remember from when I was recruiting, like in January, February, March. Those were 3 of my areas. We had Nia Bagley comes with a background in real estate, so she understands that market really well. We have Commissioner Eric Berkey, was served on the Housing Commission for a long time and has professional work in equity. So I think, it's the role of both the county board and whoever is chair at the time to kind of look at the skill set of the current commissioners and then kind of figure out what might be missing, and then to actively work on that. And then also for me, I noticed when we had Commissioner Elizabeth Gearin, she was big into biophilia. She provided a lot of expertise. When she left, I was like, well, I care a lot about this. So I started listening to all the podcasts and reading the articles because I was like, I'm going to, try to do my best to stand in that role. So yeah, but we are 2 new commissioners that were appointed earlier this fall, have experience with adaptive reuse of single family homes and smaller buildings, and then as well as biophilia.
Great. Other questions? Anybody online?
I can also say, for the planning commission, there's often interest in, folks who have served on commissions to kind of also be able to serve on the planning commission because they understand the site plan review process, or they're familiar with the county processes and things like that. I mean, our 2 most recent ones hadn't served on commissions related to SPRC, but actually I think one of them might have been a roster attendee at some of our site plan members, but a lot of our commissioners have served on other commissions. So, yeah.
When I first got on this commission, I got my first SPRC, just as Katie is doing now with Lucky Gardens. And it was the Americana in Crystal City. And I came to the planning commission and I testified and I had no idea what I was doing. I remember texting Joan McIntyre's chair, it's like, "Come here, what am I supposed to talk about?" Cause anyway, she said, "Just talk about what you said in the letter." But I'm like, "I already sent the letter." She's like, "It's okay, just talk about that." But I did, I said, "What are we doing here?" Because, we're giving this is one of the highest scores we've ever given and it's a 64. So you guys are gonna improve it and if we just keep doing this. And you in particular, so it passed, of course, and, it was a JBG Smith project, I think. And everybody had been there. I remember their lawyer came up and said, "Cindy, you sit at the table. That's what having a seat at the table means. Get up there." Because I was so clueless. But you, after it passed at the end of the meeting, you particularly said, the representatives of C2E2 is asking a good question. What are we doing here? We are approving project after project that is not in line with our community energy plan. And what are we going to do about that? And you started this dialogue that really meant a lot to me, that, showing up and seeing that you were hearing us. There are a lot of other factors besides sustainability that shows that projects are going to pass sometimes, even when they don't have sustainability, but it meant a lot that you heard us. Go.
I know a lot of the planning commissions locally, some of them get compensated because they do a lot of work. And I know there's discussion earlier in the year about maybe in the future, the planning commission for Arlington getting compensated. Where's that within the budget?
Well, it's not in the budget. You may have seen, I was not interviewed, but like asked, in an article I think that came out over the summer. Has been a difficult budget, in the last couple of years. I think it will continue to be. So I wouldn't personally advocate for pay. I had made recommendations to, caucus after talking with the fellow commissioners. Like I do think a childcare subsidy would be really helpful. Several of the commissioners have children. Babysitters cost up to $30 an hour. And so like to have to pay, $100 to go to a hearing is something that I wouldn't be likely to do. I would just like attend by Zoom or not Zoom, but Microsoft Teams. I would attend virtually for doing that. But some of my colleagues, like their partners travel all the time. And so they wouldn't be able to ever attend a meeting in person if they didn't hire the babysitter. So, for people that might be taking care of aging parents. So I think a caregiving subsidy would be a nice gesture to expand, to make it more easy to serve for the current commissioners or anybody who might be interested in serving as well. Yeah.
For a county with an annual budget of $1.6 billion, you think?
Yeah. There's an equity issue because a lot of communities only have a planning commission. And so to pay, 5 to 15 people a stipend would not be such a big impact on the budget. But since we have like 50 commissions and advisory
There's only one commission that's mandated by the state.
Yeah.
So you're not, Joe wasn't asking about every.
No, that's how you are.
Boy,
Yeah.
so that's great. Any other questions for Debbie?
Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
It's got my wheels turning. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It is an amazing commitment. It's super impressive that we have people in Arlington. That's how I felt when I went to the county board today, that everybody was we're so lucky to have the quality people that we do here. We skipped introductions because we had Takas, our chair, here hanging out, but we could, just so you know, this here, we can do a quick round of introduction. We've got two commissioners on the phone. So, Henry, if you could, I'll give you guys warnings, you can get off mute. So we'll do the room first. All right, Henry, you're off mute. Scott, you'll be next. You're off mute. All right, Henry, introduce yourself.
Sorry, I was a little trigger happy there. Hello. I think I've met Tenley before, actually, at one of the SPRCs recently. But Henry Perlow, Commissioner.
Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Bordeaux, also Commissioner.
An architect. Sounds good.
Yes, sorry.
And apparently watch that.
Yeah, right.
Producer.
Lisa Marcellus, Commissioner.
Cindy Lewin, Commissioner.
Jennifer Fiore, and this is.
George Trevette, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Elizabeth Whitney, Commissioner.
Got Snow Boss, Vice Chair of the Commission.
Rob Sindel.
Katie Thompson, Commissioner.
Jenna Peabody, Air Team, and C2E2 liaison.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. You're welcome to stay. You certainly should have a cookie or take some home for your kids.
Yes, yeah, I do have to do the bedtime routine. So
Yeah.
thank you all very much for
Thank you for
welcoming me and thank you. We very much rely on your work and your expertise and your report card. So keep it up and thank you for your time.
you. Stay warm out there. All right. So our next speaker is Jen Pieretti, who I said was that's climate action fund, but I did the climate action plan, which is getting.
We knew what you meant.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Well, I thank you for having me, and just to be forewarned, I do have to leave after this item because my son, my 5-year-old, broke his clavicle yesterday. So I too have to help with bedtime routine. And he hit a fence.
Sledding, I hope.
Sledding.
Very well, at least, you know.
I mean, you got to go down. Yeah, exactly. So we actually have to like take off his, anyways, so here I am. But no, he's fine. He's fine. 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, it's pretty fast though, they say, all things being equal. So anyway, we're good. We're surviving. So I wanted to talk about the climate action plan, and of course, Rich Dooley is, apologies for not being able to participate tonight. He's on leave, picking up his daughter from it. But climate action plan, the long-awaited. We officially signed all the paperwork with AECOM to bring them on board. They will be our consultant of record to help us to complete a full update of the community energy plan and also expand that plan to include other types of topics like water and waste and perhaps some food. That we envision that process to be about 18 to 24 months. So if we're looking at the 24-month timeframe, although I'm not wedded to that, I'm just sort of big picture, we're looking at completing the work towards the end of 27. Now that we have officially, signed the dotted line, we are in very active sort of initial planning phases, setting up our internal review systems. We have an interdepartmental working group and also the external advisory committee, which of course the C2E2 has 2 seats, which is the only commission that has 2. And that's sort of the acknowledgement that we have the energy committee that we want to have represented, or some representation of energy with a significant energy focus on the advisory committee. So that is well underway. It's just as a reminder, the climate action plan will cover mitigation, adaptation, resilience. We have 4 different tasks. This is not in priority order, just how it's organized. Creating a climate action framework. So this is where we're going to do most of our research, inventorying what's happening in the county thus far, what we've completed, looking at all of the other comp plan of the 12, right? And all of the comp plans, recommendations, creating a cohesive baseline, understanding of what we have and the climate change activities already underway. Then we also have a second task is scenario and decision support, which I know is near and dear to everybody's heart. There we'll be developing 3 greenhouse gas reduction scenarios with different pathways to carbon neutrality. So this gets at I don't have the answer for you today, but looking at sort of time-bound scenarios, what does it look like at 2050, 2045, so on and so forth. And we'll be looking at cost, feasibility, particularly looking at key strategies around building electrification and vehicle electrification, because of the impact that those have on the greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1, scope 2 in Arlington. We are also conducting a desktop climate hazard assessment is what we're calling it, but it's essentially a vulnerability assessment where we're looking at flooding and drought and extreme heat using existing data. So we're not creating bespoke data. You probably saw that George Mason University recently published their assessment. That is incredible timing for us. We will use that and many other reports that were published in the most recent sort of couple years to help us to design that vulnerability assessment. So yay for us that we have that. And then we are also, as we develop this work, we're going to be evaluating, prioritizing about 80. This is in the scope, so it can be small, it can be less, or it can be a little bit more, but about 80 to 100 climate actions using the C40 cities evaluation tool. And hopefully that will get us to also looking at not just not evaluating the priorities themselves, but their co-benefits and being able to sort of balance the variety of different strategies relative to their co-benefits, the costs and impact. And then community engagement, which we do it well in Arlington. So our goal is to have a number of different checkpoints along the way, not just online feedback forms, but pop-ups and focus groups and sort of all the works that you would expect in a comp plan element update. And we'll be looking, of course, as part of this, relying to some extent on the advisory committee. So this is the external group to help us shape the look and feel of that engagement and, of course, the policy document itself. And we may even ask the advisory committee members if they're interested in helping us to amplify and do some of that engagement, but we'll see how that all works out. Also on the advisory group, I should mention that we specifically built in 12 different opportunities for deep dive discussions on particular topics, recognizing that not everyone at the table will have the same understanding of those, policy areas. And so hoping to create a baseline understanding of not only providing background, but also like what's the state of the art. And we may look to C2E2 / the EC to develop particular areas a little bit further that we might not be able to cover in the advisory committee, but nevertheless, our goal is to at least get everyone somewhat up to speed so that that advisory committee can be well informed as they're providing guidance to staff. And then plan development, of course. So we're looking to have 3 sort of main documents: the draft, the initial administrative draft, a public review sort of draft, and then the final draft, each of which will have its own unique opportunity for some level of engagement. I think the first engagement really will be around visioning, so we'll have sort of like that vision engagement, and then the initial draft, and then you've got your final draft. So that's really the goal in a nutshell. I will ultimately be working on branding and all of the things that go around it. That's why I don't have a deck for you. And also it's not quite the launch yet. You're getting a bit of a preview.
Right.
I should also say though, speaking of launch, customary to any climate action plan, which I know you all know, we are going to be launching the climate action plan on February 25th from 5 to 8. You will all get we'll send the commission an invitation, but if you want to just pencil it down, save the date. And we are, it's because it's in the wintertime, we thought it would be really lovely to partner with libraries, who is doing a theme on, Arlington Read's theme is food. And so our focus, and we are partnering with the James Beard Foundation and are inviting various different authors and sustainable farming farmers and others to talk about sort of the food cycle itself and the impact on greenhouse gas emissions. So from where you source your food to how you cook your food, to how maybe what you eat a little bit, and then also to how you dispose of it. So that's sort of the full cycle.
That's awesome.
Are you gonna do a charcuterie board?
You know, I love a good charcuterie board. We are going to have some fights. Yeah. So, yes. And that concludes my presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Marvelous, very exciting. I'd love to follow up, just gonna limit myself to two quick ones. What is the name of the contractor? I know you said it very.
Oh, sure,
quickly.
it's
I hear it.
AECom,
AECom.
COM. Mhm.
Okay,
They were they are quite well known in the sort of climate planning sphere. Yeah, Montgomery County,
awesome.
yeah, Montgomery County, most recent climate action plan. I mean, they're across the country. There's a couple of really good examples. Yeah.
Okay,
Remind us,
Yes.
what's the timeline for completing this? It sounds like it'll be a very thoughtful process.
Sure.
Right, but what's?
So it's 18 to 24 months. And from kickoff, I mean, I'm saying like end of 2027. And although I do like speed, we all know the project management time is triangle, time, money, quality, pick two. And money is probably the one that is least likely to move. And so we really have to sort of be thoughtful about where we want to, what emphasis we want to, time or quality. And I would imagine quality maybe perhaps more than time. So balancing the two.
I'm really intrigued by this advisory committee concept, which was new to me. Maybe it's been explained to you. Totally new to me. Have you thought about how many seats there's going to be, how often they're going to meet, that sort of stuff?
Yes. Well, the seats is somewhat fluid. Right now, we have identified a little under 20 seats, like I said, 2 of which that are going to C2E2. Primarily, I'd say about 50% of the composition of the group are made of commissioners from various commissions. So, think Transportation Commission, Housing Commission, Planning. And then the remaining seats are, we'd like to think of as they're going to be serving certain at-large. Yeah, exactly. So we've got representatives from our environmental sort of advocacy groups, business development. Yeah, that's basically the sum total of it. And then and within that, not all, and I would say on the nonprofit side, not all are environmental only focused, right? We want to have a balance within those groups as well.
So, and just in terms of process, is the county board going to appoint this advisory committee? Is the county manager going to appoint this advisor? How does that, is it official? Is it going to be official? Are you still working through these issues?
Advisory. Is that part of your question, Doug?
I don't know how these things work.
Yes.
Just really ignore me.
You are getting ahead because I was going to say that Elizabeth is chair of the energy committee and me as chair of C2E2 will have the 2 C2E2 seats.
Okay, I'm just, but
but
the
I
rest
know
of it is like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is it going to be like an open meeting?
So we'll
I hope not.
no, I mean, we won't, it's a planning advisory committee, which is less formal than the committees and the commissions that you're used to. It's and so while we would certainly be, welcome any public feedback or engagement, we still have to meet certain requirements, like we can't have more than 2 commissioners in the same room, because if we'd run afoul of the commission, regulatory requirements. But the idea is really one of just providing planning and guidance support. So it is a county manager appointed
county manager.
advice. Yes.
So, but what I'm hearing there is that it's like Jen and Rich have to recruit.
Yes, and we are actively
Okay.
recruiting, and we've
Great.
gotten so far a lot of great interest in participating.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And of course, we won't be able to have representation from everyone. We'd love to, but it becomes at some point the group will become so unruly. So what we've tried to do is design, and it's still not worked out, of course, in detail, but we'd like to do deep dive conversation through focus groups where we could bring in other organizations that might not necessarily have a seat at the advisory committee table, but nevertheless have an opportunity to provide some really specialized input on certain aspects of the plan.
And certainly everybody on C2E2 will be involved
Oh, yeah.
because we'll come back and talk about it and take feedback and like we always do.
So just a quick observation, and this is something that you explained to me early on when we first met, was this whole idea of somebody who's climate aware, people are not climate aware. And a big part of what you're trying to do is make more people climate aware. And so I see this, I'm not going to pin a lot of hopes on like, oh, your final document is just a beautiful masterwork, but the process is going to make more people in Arlington climate aware. That's how now you don't have to agree with that, but that's just me. That's what I see. So I think that's great.
And yeah, I'm with you, Doug. I appreciate that. And every opportunity of engagement is an opportunity to help people better understand the challenges that we're facing, even the people who are in it neck deep, right? And so hopefully, and that's why we strategically paying for it are having AECOM have those sort of deep educational opportunities for 12 of those committee meetings. And you asked about frequency. It's, we're probably going to be meeting maybe monthly or bi-monthly for 2 years straight.
Advisory committee. And plus the deep dives.
The deep dives are part of those meetings. We're going to weave those in, and it will really be designed to some extent based on what the advisory committee thinks that they need more information on. We did this somewhat informally with the Forestry and Natural Resource Plan update, and we thought that it was a sort of good use of our time. Yeah.
Great. Never go home for 5-year-old.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Exciting.
I always do virtual.
Oh, I like it first. Gino can handle this. My husband's he can handle the kids, but it's like the taking off of the sling and all and the crying that happens. That's where I need to go.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is our annual report. And I think it was a good year. I mean, this was the year of the climate action resolution. This was the year when Jen really, although she started before this year, really made her stride for the climate work plan that we worked on for the annual CEO work plan, not the climate action plan. And Jason started in December of last year, so the air team has had a lot of changes. This is the year in which GBIP, so they've gone for 2 years. So a lot happened, and we had a lot of SPRCs, a lot of letters. Anyway, we have our annual report up. Thanks again, Jen. We have our annual report up. Yeah, and I made changes to talk about, so Rob suggested, I'd said, I'd really focus on the fact that this year we really imposed one project. And Rob suggested we put that in context and say that we supported and made constructive recommendations for 9, but there was one we thought was terrible because why just really focus on that? So I made that change in response to Rob's comment. And if we keep scrolling down, right. And this whole of government, whole of community, I struggled with that. That is what we've consistently said is what we've wanted. And frankly, honestly, you cannot sit and listen to Jen Fioretti and not realize that we're getting that. She is working with all these different departments to bring in the whole of government. And when I talked to her and she's saying, oh, I just met with just talking to people all over. And the whole of community, we've got the corporate climate leaders, we've got, situating out to businesses. So there's a lot happening there. That has been our mantra, what we want to be known, what we want to know. So that's actually language from last year. But
that's something we're taking credit for, though. I mean, sounds like it's mostly.
Well, we were taking credit for it, and we did say hire somebody to do this, and they did. So I don't know. I had
the way it was written though is the leadership. I mean,
We continue to advance.
but we, everything we
should
do,
we say support? We continue to support.
right? That's fine.
Yeah.
Instead of less.
No. I would say
Instead of the word-
C2E2 continues to support instead of advance. And then I like applauding Jennifer and the climate policy office.
Right.
Yeah, and the second sentence seems to repeat. I mean, we say it 3 times, whole government, whole
Okay.
community, right?
So I
Oh,
think
yeah.
And those 2 sentences.
give this in these areas.
heading and then
Because
Just,
leadership
can-
shown in these areas.
in this
Yeah.
regard, or something.
Yeah, well, can we be even more specific about where that, like, just say appreciate her
Where-
hosting monthly
Hosting
meetings with the leads of all these
here.
departments. Let's be specific about like something that she did, because otherwise people don't.
Really about us.
Yeah,
So I don't know that we want to go into that much detail. I think just say in these areas.
And to me, it just looks like code that if you're on the county board and you don't know what whole government, whole community means in practice, it doesn't add a lot of value, right? If you just say specifically what is, the title is okay as, because it's a term we use, but then we have to kind of describe what that means.
But are you talking about in terms of sustainability? I mean, so.
In terms of this committee, I mean, why is it relevant to us? What did we do as a success? Like all these other bullets are successes on what we did as C2E2 and then.
With all respect, that whole paragraph comes from.
Yeah, it just it doesn't bring home unless we
You've got a
actually.
Great letter.
Being able to say how happy we are with Jen.
You could say that at the end of the letter.
Yeah. Appreciate her work, appreciate Jen's work in the climate policy office and working across the departments and outreach to the community,
Well,
you know,
we
like,
sort of do say at the end, we do talk about both the air team and, yeah, but yeah. Talking about the close staff working relationships, which we hope they value.
I mean, that you may want to, if you want to work in a whole government, whole community, maybe you could work that language into that paragraph or something somehow.
I don't feel that strongly about it. So this is a very different, last year's letter had a whole list of all the things that we say we stand for, whole government, whole community being the first. But that wasn't really an annual report. It's like, you know, and I feel like that's what our work plan is for. So this letter is much shorter. Are there any other comments between where you are, Jenna, and where?
Oh, that was just about the being
Right, I
consistent
only
with
put
it.
in a couple of names because I only put in names of people they thought that they've heard of, but I could change it so they start with the organization and then
Okay.
topic and then with the names of the people.
Yeah,
I think it just gets too noisy with random names of random people.
yeah, that's whatever you think's appropriate there. I mean, I don't feel strongly. It's just pointing at inconsistency. That's all.
Other comments? Joe, you were putting something in one of the documents, but I didn't have a chance to see what it was.
Oh, I think that
Is
was
it
the other
work
one.
plan? Okay. So any other questions about? Any other comments?
One quick correction, our speaker from SAFE, Securing America's Future Energy, was about AI on transportation specifically.
And for those of you who've been coming to these meetings and wondering where all these fabulous speakers are, they're almost all, they're all the energy committee. I think the energy committee functions sort of as our, if we were a big
I
corporate,
think of them
we'd
as
be the-
hearings.
Oh,
what would you say?
Me too. I think of them as hearings, like we hear from people.
I was gonna say you're like the innovation lab. Or, you're getting all these fresh ideas and I think it's fantastic. Okay, so I'll change the format of that so it looks more consistent. Okay, so let's scroll down. Is there anything else people want to talk about here? Any other comments between here and the bottom? I don't think there are. We did a lot of letters. We did a lot of things. Reason I was mushy about more than 20 letters, there's more than 20 letters and there's all this other stuff too that I didn't count, all these different kinds of comments, stuff.
I'm back to the budget thing. real quick.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, budget.
Very annual time.
Those were the
Yeah,
three
good.
things we did on budget.
Thank you.
Well, we don't have a quorum, although we have, if you count people online, we do have a quorum, but under Arlington County rules, we can't count people online. So I'm still gonna ask for acclamation to approve this, because we have to send it out for our next meeting. So, is there anyone who is concerned about this or Jenna, I'm sorry you're sick.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't.
Okay, so I'll fix that and we'll get that out.
Great letter.
Yes, really well done.
Very
Yeah,
nice stuff.
yeah.
A virtual letter, by the way, because then we could always like just link, be like, we provided more than 20 letters, like to our letter page.
Oh, yeah, you could do that.
Cool.
And you did put, we talked about it, and you did put some of the things that weren't exactly letters into the letters.
Yeah, like that attachments, all the attachments.
Right. Okay, so Jenna, you have to work on this. You don't have to do it tomorrow.
I'm out on Wednesday, so I have to do it tomorrow.
Okay, so I think we're done with this one then. Any other comments? Thank you.
Great job, Cindy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Okay, the work plan, and we do look back at the work plan on a regular basis all of next year, so. The big new things in the work plan, and it's, it feels like there's some language that comes over and over, like whole of governmental. It is right in the first thing. In the first objective, that we want the whole of the government, the whole of the county, and, community to work on things. But there's this one has a much bigger focus on power plan. Jen was talking about food. I've added food. Susan Cunningham asked that we put in attracting green businesses. So I put that in, but I was like, don't you think that's the Economic Development Commission? But
You say green businesses, businesses that are involved in
yeah, like clean energy,
projects or
Call that
businesses
clean
that
tech.
aren't themselves.
Yeah. clean tech, because they're building this innovation district. So I put that in there. It's a little bit aspirational in the sense that I don't currently have a sense how we could do that.
Oh,
But
I don't think it's a bad idea to maybe hear from like a commissioner from the Economic Development Committee or Arlington Economic Development about what they're doing. I know that they're focusing on attracting tech companies.
Right,
I did make this suggestion to them when they came to present to a group that I'm a part of, that civic focus on clean tech would be very beneficial given everything that's going on in Northern Virginia with data centers and energy. And the growth that we need to see there, and we've got a lot going for us in terms of the population that we have here. And even though that development's happening in counties further south, there's no reason why the companies that rise up or start up to innovate in that space would be headquartered in Arlington because of our proximity to DC as well. So, I think it makes a lot of sense to continue talking about these things, to coordinate some of those other entities that have responsibility there.
right. And I think it's great that Susan Cunningham is thinking about things that she thinks we can help with. But if he's right or wrong, it's nice that she's thinking that we can be helpful. So,
So question on that, because I think I see the bullet in there about it. It's about encouraging the county to do it. I think it's,
setting up the incubator, should we go down to Joe?
yeah, you're talking about the
I haven't seen them.
the Green Tech Business Innovation District. That's specifically what we're talking about.
Right. Oh, and I should mention about the names. I put a lot of names in brackets, and many of those people aren't here, which those are, I hadn't really talked to people about whether they could do these things. So I just put their names in brackets.
Did voluntold them, yeah.
There's a lot.
I'm gonna be chair.
There's a lot of things that we really think. It was interesting listening to Kelly talk about recruiting, because we recruited specifically for stormwater and for solid waste, and we didn't find a lot, and also biophilia. So Lisa's doing solid waste and biophilia. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah.
But we really don't have one. Mark left, we really lost our stormwater person, and we really haven't found another one. So it is hard to say. I think, Joe, I might have put your name by stormwater, but it's in brackets. Anyway, so I think those earlier comments were Rob saying, yeah, I can do this. You can take my name out of brackets. And here we are, but the corporate climate leaders, yeah.
It was in here somewhere.
I don't know that it was. But I could put it in. I like that idea.
Yeah, that kind of, so our legislative priorities letter we sent two months ago has
Right.
those three main priorities.
Right,
Obviously, I think the VPP has talked about a good amount in here. And then there's another bullet for the other one, the benchmarking, which we
Benchmarking, yeah.
explicitly say continue to advocate for like legislation on.
right.
And then the other one, we don't include at all, which is like the corporate reporting. So I thought
Right.
in some manner it could be incorporated.
Okay. Yeah, we can put that in. And that would give people a lot more to say. Okay, so I will put those, I'll find a way to work in those two items.
And then for the bullet you were talking about, which is the clean tech bullet right there, I think it's still the same one I
Yeah,
highlighted.
yeah,
So so county board member asked us to put a bullet in here to encourage them to take action on.
kind of, yeah, because she sees us as pushing staff in the same way that she sees them as pushing staff. But we could just say, work with but we're not going to do anything to attract green tech to the innovation district. I guess the part of Crystal City has been designated as the innovation district.
Around HQ2.
Seems like a good place to put it, huh?
Yeah. Is that now National Landing?
Yes.
Yeah.
They chip China,
Yeah.
change it,
Maybe
not to the local.
so Tracy, the national landing bid
I'm
person.
leaning into it.
No.
My first.
Yeah,
It's nice now.
I've got national landing. I've sort of lost West Post or whatever it is. Part of it that they've just carved out, so this is West Post.
I've never heard that term.
But you have heard of it, or I said Westport, whatever it is, it's not sticking. Are there any other comments on the work plan? Kudos to Elizabeth and the Energy Committee, because I do think virtual power plant is. Right, the ramp plan was the stormwater.
Make it happen.
Yeah, the Chesapeake Bay. Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I don't know if that still exists, but if it does.
That's still like this, but it's only had one issue in the 3 years that I've been on here. And it was and that issue arose the week after the person who was Mark, our stormwater guy, was really into it. And the whole time he was on the commission, we never had a single issue. It was a week after he left. They're like, oh my God, it's a crisis. So that may be an assignment with no work. I hope so for your sake. Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments on the work plan? Yeah, if you Google search, you see I threw food in there under solid waste. So we heard Jen outline all of the different ways of food, of where you shop, how you cook, where you're obtaining your groceries, all of that. I just have food waste in here, but we could expand it. We don't have a small scope now, just.
What's one more broad issue?
I like that they're doing this kickoff and that's great, but the combining food, I mean, that's a stretch to me. And I know they want to piggyback on the library and the reads. And the library is a great facility for having public events and that's great. And if you want to talk about induction cooktops, great. But to me, that's a little bit of a stretch. I'm not saying they shouldn't do it, but.
I'll just share having gone through the Eco Ambassador training with
Eco Action.
Eco Action Arlington. So and this is funded by Jennifer and then also by Alexandria City. And they basically are driving home, 4 themes. And we heard about in county operations only count 3% of emissions, right? So all the emissions reductions are going to come from behavioral change and individual action, right? So that's the 4 areas are energy conservation in people's homes, electrification where it makes sense for folks, multimodal transport, right? Reducing single ride in gas powered vehicles, and then food and reducing waste, and there's a lot of different approaches to that from upfront to, reducing the amount that ultimately has to get wasted because you bought too much or didn't buy the right or got spoiled in the fridge, to what you do with leftovers and things like that. So that's one of the 4 theme areas that they came out with in terms of behavioral change things that we're supposed to be pushing
Individual level.
at the individual level, right? So that's probably why she's.
Oh, so I'm gonna eat some leftovers, therefore I'm saving the planet. Okay. Great.
Well, I mean, maybe there's a more targeted way to get at it.
Yeah.
Like, what's the highest impact action we could take with respect to food?
If the price of beef went up
Yeah, it's
4
Not
times
even
and
meat.
people stopped eating so much beef, but you're getting me going.
Well,
Thanks for sharing.
composting, if we dramatically increase
Yes.
composting,
Exactly.
so it's not going into
Right.
landfills, that would be significant.
Yeah.
And we heard a presentation on composting.
Mm-hmm.
And we heard that Arlington residents are 23% of households are doing composting. And this rumor erupted and that was wrong and more people were doing it, but they were doing composting in their own backyard and not participating in the counties that were getting counted. But I'm gonna go with 23%, maybe 24. So there's a lot of.
10% or 5, come on, who are we fooling?
Well, no, they're talking about putting the bins around. What are they called? The big,
Yeah, they're now around like Pentagon City and stuff like that.
Bellies.
big bellies, yeah. Yeah.
Things that you put food in and it's like a mail drop.
But
Yeah,
a lot of it was also putting, which we weren't doing as much either. My old household was putting like all the banana peels and all that other stuff into the green bins, right? So the whole idea is to reduce the amount, because our solid waste is then going to this incinerator down, waste to energy facility. That's then, right in Alexandria, then spewing out the emissions from there. So the idea is to reduce the solid waste stream. And in the food area, even if we are throwing out leftovers, the idea is to make sure it goes to the green bin or gets composted in the backyard.
Did anybody go to the rock and roll recycling event hosted by the Solid Waste Bureau? Besides me, I got there 10 minutes before it closed, but it was fascinating because it turned out I could spend a lot more time there, but I couldn't. It shows you, they have this big pile of dirt that is where your composting goes. And the county staff built this whole thing themselves. It turns it over. And you can see the things that aren't supposed to be in there, like, turning with the dirt, like, pizza boxes that haven't dissolved yet and stuff. Oh.
Is that?
Henry,
Oh, Henry's got a question.
Yeah, sorry. That wasn't so much a question, and can you hear me all right? Sorry, I just want to make sure my headphones are
Speak up,
working
speak up.
properly. Sorry, how's that? Is that any better?
yes.
Better? Awesome. Yeah, it was just another thought on the food waste side. Maybe it can take the form of more education or outreach opportunities. I know that some of the bus stops and from one of the presentations that we saw a while ago now, but they were talking about the initiatives around the county to improve awareness around food waste and composting. As a proud vegan, there's also co-benefits associated with eating more plants, like better health outcomes. So maybe that's one way that we could come at the food waste or food impact side.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And Henry, I hope you noticed I put your name in. I don't think I put brackets around it. By public education and outreach, because that is the drum that you've consistently been.
There you go. I'm
You and
going to
Jen.
beat that drum all the way to Mom's Organic Market.
Yeah, exactly. So other comments, I want to have time for Elizabeth to talk about the Energy Commission. So other comments, so those are the newish themes. This, of course, will be a living document. We can change it as we go. I remember last year, we put in mid-year, they were going to write a budget letter in the fall, and we put Doug's name by that, and sure enough, Doug wrote a budget letter without my even calling him to say, hey, I see this in the work plan. It was awesome. So, it will be documented, but, we should feel like we are going to send this to the county board. So we should feel like this is pretty much what we're planning to work on. So any other comments? Please have a cookie.
I wanted to talk about leaders' responsibility.
Okay, did you come to make a public comment?
I did.
Oh, but you can make a public comment. Okay. All right, well, hold that thought. We'll keep going, but we will save time for you to talk about. Yeah, so producer responsibility. We had that in our legislative priorities letter. So, but we could always stand hear more about it. Okay, so are we good to go with the work plan? Because again, it is going to be sent to the board. And again, we have 9 members, which is more than a majority, but not officially a quorum. So I'm going to call for a non-binding vote. All in favor of the work plan?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Going to send it up. Now I'm going to put a note on it saying that we didn't have a quorum. Okay.
Brackets are binding.
It's a living document. Okay, Elizabeth, over to you, but
Okay.
so we don't have a quorum to appoint all these new members to the Energy Committee, but I think we should appoint them. And then we can ratify that appointment at the next meeting where we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I would love to do that. And I can kind of start there. We have had a number of openings on the Energy Committee this year that we talked about filling, and I finally got around to really gathering everybody up, and we have a little bit of an owner's process where we need a resume plus a statement of interest plus an interview in order to add people, and then it's C2E2 that actually adds members. But so we do at this point have a number of folks who would like to join the Energy Committee that we have met with and that I'm recommending today. One is Samson Boyer, who has some experience with residential energy efficiency programs. Perry Lindstrom, who has expertise in emissions and quantification and gas sector. Daniel Gray, who specializes in outreach programming. Aggie Siram, who is an expert in energy resilience and emergency management systems. Jake Weber, who specializes in indoor air quality. And Lily Diaz, who is a member of C2E2, would like to be on the Energy Committee. There are a couple others who are still in the queue that we may add later, but I think adding these folks is well timed. We have been recruiting for energy expertise rather than just necessarily an interest in energy or a desire for advocacy to really build the brain trust for county staff to reach into and for us to continue sort of learning about energy issues and bringing that expertise to bear. So I am proposing that C2E2 appoint these 6 individuals on block to the Energy Committee, subject to a confirmation vote, I guess, at our January meeting.
And Elizabeth, that will get the Energy Committee up to 13. You have 7 now.
No, we have, I think we have 11. So this would get us to 17. We have availability for 20 members, but we've had some fluctuation. We added somebody who then moved away after only being able to attend 2 meetings. We've had a number.
Was that for Nando?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
A number of people stepped down this year. So we have had some issues with reaching the quorum. I think there were 2 or 3 meetings this year where we didn't reach a quorum. And then with the virtual meeting policy, it's going to be even more challenging to do so. So I think adding some more members who are sort of fresh blood, really committed to participating, help us in that regard as well.
Will your motion coming from a committee does not need a second? Is there any discussion?
Elizabeth,
If you send bios around for the folks that.
I am not, I'll send the
Statements of interest.
this state.
This is the universal signal for statements of interest. This is the universal signal for resumes. Yeah.
Elizabeth has graciously allowed me to participate in her interviews with these people, and I support each one of them that she mentioned.
And Jake Weber, you've met, he's come to us several, where he was always sits in the back. He's come to several of those. Yeah, he would. Yeah.
To the last C2E2 meeting.
Yeah, he's come to a bunch.
That's great. Well, it's good to know that you guys interview stuff. Like, I don't know what the process is for just like, expression of interest. So they went actively recruited, right? I mean,
We actively recruited. We had a couple of people who applied directly to the EC, but most applied to C2E2. It's a little bit easier to do that on the website. And then Cindy did her recruiting and passed me some folks who, were maybe a better fit for the EC versus C2E2. And so these were the folks, so I reached out to a lot of those folks. A good fit.
Okay, any other questions before we vote? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and reach out to these folks and let them know that they're approved, subject to a final vote, but I'll also send around the materials, et cetera. So next item from me is, we have a couple of letters, including one with, some supporting materials that I would love to get C2E2 feedback on. These are gonna be coming from the Energy Committee, but we've never done a year-end summary letter like the one we just approved for C2E2. But our charter does allow us to make recommendations directly to the county manager. Earlier this year, we had a speaker from APS, and we intended to do some recommendations solely around APS. That took some twists and turns, and because it wasn't really clear how that letter should be addressed, we ended up writing to our counterparts on the APS Sustainability Committee. So we have a letter that's focused on APS and some things that they can take a look at. I took comments on the draft multiple iterations. So this was originally drafted over the summer, had some initial comment from committee members. Talked a little bit with APS staff on the facilities side. Pulled back a little bit from sending it directly. I think at the time it was addressed to the superintendent. Thought about sending it to the county manager. We worked a little bit, took some additional comment this last week from the Energy Committee members. So this has been through a couple revisions, but these are the recommendations that we have, and I'll just go through them really quickly. Number one is regarding efficiency, really focused on making sure that the APF has good data about efficiency. They do a pretty good job in terms of having efficient buildings. But one of the things we thought could go a little further was making sure that people are actually utilizing their bus routes. A lot of folks aren't, so that could be more efficient there. Promoting clean tech, another theme for us. We discovered that energy jobs, particularly those requiring trade school as opposed to higher education, are expected to grow faster than average, in some cases much faster than average. So that's an opportunity for APS to kind of lean into that and promote science education. Electric school buses, I'm not going to go into that. We know that's important, as well as solar and battery storage. The APS is doing a good job on this, but batteries in particular are something that we think could be particularly valuable in the future. And then using climate and energy information to engage students, particularly in science, but also beyond. We had a late edition on coordinating for information and economies of scale with respect to funding opportunities. So I'm still working through some of the comments from last week, but wanted to make sure the commission saw this letter and where we're going with it, as well as the folks who were copying on the letter. So happy to answer any questions on that.
Just briefly, a little more detail about who this letter you're proposing to send it to.
So the letter is now addressed to the chair of the APS Sustainability Committee, which is our commission. That if there's a little clearer line in our charter to lead with APS as opposed to make recommendations to APS. So I think this is we had a good suggestion from one of the committee members to address it to the chair of the APS committee, and then it kind of open up dialogue for us to continue to collaborate on these matters. I did meet with Eric Tilden earlier this summer, and we'll give him and Kathy Lynn and Tanner a heads up that this letter's coming. Running out of time, but get it all done. So I don't know that we need a vote on these things. I really just kind of wanted to make sure commissioners had a chance to see it and weigh in. Next item is more substantial. As I mentioned, we did want to do a letter of recommendation directly to Mark Schwartz that sort of summarizes our activities for this year and some big takeaways. As you guys saw from the list of speakers that we had this year, we really drilled in on the changes to the energy sector, particularly to the grid, around AI and data centers and energy prices. So we have a number of recommendations that we think are important preparation for the county in advance of embarking on the climate action plan, steps that the county manager can take now that we think will have a positive budgetary impact that will protect against the impacts of rising energy prices and really set the county up for success in this new and changing climate. That's climate with a lowercase c, no pun intended. But so the letter, Jen, I don't know if you want to switch over. Could you switch over to the letter to Mark Schwartz? So this is a cover letter that sort of describes the problem and what we looked into this year. But then we have three main recommendations. One is to get more solar and batteries, basically. We think these are assets that could be monetized in the future with virtual power plants, which is another priority for C2E2. One focused on buildings and making buildings more efficient and resilient. Residents make their homes more resilient. We're still kind of working on how to describe that global recommendation. But the third is to pursue public-private partnerships. So we have one-pagers on each of those three recommendations that go into more depth. And our hope is that, I've heard that the county manager does read everything that is set this way, but we hope it'll spark a conversation with folks on the AIR team and climate policy office in support of things that they're already doing, and sort of moving things forward and basically creating a different framework for thinking about some of these things that maybe in the past have only been looked at through the lens of reducing emissions, but in a time when we're also preparing for higher energy prices and a lot of innovation around energy. I think these are things that the county can do to really position us well for the future that's coming. So happy to go through each of these one-pagers. I don't know that we really have time, but I did want to just let folks see what we were working on. I, again, am still working through a number of the comments and revisions that were proposed at C2E2.
At energy.
At the Energy Committee, I'm sorry. But this is what they look like, just kind of recommendations and a budget impact that, again, is still being revised. Yes.
Doug,
Well, I want to compliment and thank Elizabeth for
Yeah.
working so hard
I
on
was
this.
going to do that too.
It's very, very excellent work, and you put a lot of time in and very thoughtful and careful consideration on all this. So I just have one general comment, and then if you would be so kind as to give me no more than 5 minutes of your time to talk about three minor stylistic
I will
things.
stay. I'll stay after.
Great. I'll
Yeah,
just
we
be
can
real
do
quick
that.
on it. But here's the concern. So one of the things that C2E2 is doing this year and as the upcoming budget cycle is we're trying to get 2 more spots for the AIR team. We have a county budget of 1.6 billion. We have over 3,000 county employees, yet there are only 9 people working on climate issues. And our, what I think relatively modest ask is to increase the air team by 2 FTEs, 2 people, add 2 staff spots. But what would undercut our request would be language such as understanding that the coming year will be extraordinarily budget constrained, or even in a difficult budget year. I don't think we want to undercut our ask by saying, oh, but by the way, of course, you don't have to because it's a tight budget year, which most years are a tight budget year. So I don't think this language adds much to the point that you're trying to make in these letters for this one pager. And I would just hope that they could be removed, because we don't want the opponents of our ask to come back. Oh, but in the letter you said yourself it's a tight budget year, so forget it. No, can't do it.
I'm happy to work with you on that, Doug. Made a note here.
Right. I put that in one of our letters too, because it feels like recognizing it's reasonable. It's not reasonable, and you made me take that out of my letter too, so.
Thank goodness. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I hope to send us copies of the final as they continue to be developed.
I will.
And-
I was also hoping to get some feedback and thoughts on C2E2 about who should be CC'd on these documents. CC, this one's for Mark. Yeah.
Get to the board members.
Well, I think that's very difficult because Elizabeth is trying to draw the line that C2E2 is supposed to advise the board, and the Energy Committee is allowed to advise the manager, but not the.
It's just a VC. It's not, we're not advising, we're just advising. Know that this is going to this other person.
I know it's an interesting question, and you have to go back to the history of the Energy Committee, which used to be a freestanding committee that did advise. And then it was created to oversee the development of the community energy plan, I think. And then after that plan was created, it wasn't clear there was enough more for it to be doing, so it was folded in. I think that normally if it had just been a committee, I think it would be odd for us not to send everything in the committee to send anything. But because it used to be a separate entity, the compromise that was devised at the time was that, and thanks to John Bloom, who's not with us because he's very sick. With compromise
I think it
was
would be
the
appropriate.
manager.
You don't think it's appropriate? Okay, that's enough.
I think it's a good question. I think it's odd to be writing to the county manager and not the county board. But I think that's what was alleged. I think that was the compromise that was
We
struck.
can make sure the right board members.
The county manager is
Because
going,
You don't have to put their
What the
names on the page.
county manager is
Okay.
gonna take,
Ken's gonna forward it.
Okay.
the county manager's gonna give it to Jenna and
Argument would be,
Jason
it would be easy to say,
Jen and Rich.
courtesy copy, directing the letter to somebody.
Well, can you make the argument that we just copied like Don Byer on it and say, well, what did you just send it to?
Well, I'd be happy.
Well, one thought I had was that, depending on the timing, when C2E2 sends the letter to the board, you could use it, add it as an appendix.
As an attachment, yeah.
If you would like, it's a lot of material to go for.
I agree with Doug. It's really impressive that you put it all together, and it's short and concise, which we all know takes 3 times as long to make it that way. So, Jen and I are both getting sicker by the minute. So before we do too much more, would you like to make a 3-minute public comment on producer responsibility? You don't have to, but if that was your intent.
I actually am tracking a lot of different issues, but that is one of them that I've been tracking, and I see that a lot of states are adopting producer responsibility.
It is pretty simple.
It's where producers have to take responsibility for the materials in the packaging that they use to sell their products, and different states use it. Have adopted different standards with California, Oregon, Washington, the forerunners, but other states such as Minnesota, Virginia, Tennessee, others looking at developing producer responsibility
For
standards
PFAS or what?
for all packaging, for all packaging. So, with the virtues of, with the standards of, the materials they use, how sustainable those materials are, if there are toxic elements to the materials, the weight. And this has been in place for years. And it's finally coming to the US, and there's a hope that states will have to take a more standardized approach. So it's easier for companies to handle it, but companies are embracing it. And it's to the point where in some states, such as, I believe it's Arizona, if they don't meet the standards, they can't even sell their product in that state. So companies are taking it very seriously, and it's an opportunity for us in Virginia to really lean in and to work with the private sector to develop standards that.
Heading of producer responsibility.
If you build it, you need to be responsible.
Okay. I'm not aware of that, so that's interesting. I'm
Yeah.
trying to look at now.
I can try to summarize some of the things of the fleet.
It's not something I think we would do just in Arlington, but we did throw it into our letter.
Yeah.
Our legislative priorities letter.
You say priorities, okay.
Yeah, that long list. I might have deleted it, shit, but it was. So, well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So I think I think we will save the November meeting summary till the next meeting. I think on updates, the big update is the GBI passed, and it was on the consent agenda. And we had the opportunity to think about taking it off and ask for some of the things that we wanted in our letter, like to have standard site conditions updated. And we decided not to do that we thought it was very good overall, and we didn't want to hold it up. And then the environmental advocacy groups had the same discussion and reached the same conclusion, decided they didn't want to pull it off the consent agenda, so it passed after all of the discussions for the last 2 years. It just passed on the consent agenda with no discussion, which, so hooray. It'll be very exciting to see if there's, uptake and all of that. Also, we spent a lot of time talking about the Alexandria policy. They put out a green building policy that was not an incentive policy, but rather their standard site. They put out a draft, and it was very aggressive and forward-looking. And we were like, see, Alexandria is requiring all this stuff, even though we're a Dillon rule state and they can't really require it. They're just requiring it anyway, and saying it's all a matter of negotiation, and we're just putting out what we want to negotiate for. And we were pushing Keystone County to do all that and talking about that. And they just have withdrawn their policy and put out a much less forward-looking policy that is pretty much now puts Arlington back in the lead. So that was interesting because I don't know what the backstory is. I don't know, Jenna, if you know what the backstory is
For
for Alexandria, for why they pulled their policy.
I don't.
Yeah, but I think we can guess what it might have been. So those were two things I wanted to share. Yeah, and the other thing I have here is that Susan says she really wants people, it really makes a difference if you come to the county board. So, and then we asked Henley and she says, makes a difference if you come to the planning commission. So that definitely adds to our workload, but it's interesting to hear them say that they care that we show up. So anything else for the?
Just the one thing, it's like, go, it's like you're gonna say something.
First, sorry I didn't make the board meeting. I'm really confused with how they structure the meeting, but
Me too. They sent out a note saying it was gonna be Thursday.
yeah, look, and then that one was highlighted, so I thought it was like the Wednesday meeting. I don't know how these meetings work, but
Either.
and then a question, did the River House project pass the county board?
Think they voted?
Yes, no, it's in Arl now. It said it passed.
Oh, was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I didn't wait around for that 5 hours. So I was there Saturday morning. And so it is somewhat opaque, the process, and it is sort of a thing where once you've done it a few times, you understand it a lot better. So I went and spoke to the county board on Saturday morning during the initial 2-minute thing that's not connected to any particular issue. Anybody can come in and talk about whatever they want. So I was sandwiched between the NAACP person complaining about a discrimination, something or other. Natalie Roll was right behind me with her big banner and, oh, you tore down our tree in Lion Park. Oh my God. But I did speak for 2 minutes about our budget ask. I didn't identify myself as a C2E2 person. I just said I'm a citizen. And I said, 1.6 billion, 3,000 employees, 9 people working on climate change. We just want 2 more. And then I kind of went for the heartstrings and talked about my dad and my kids and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so it was fun. It was interesting. And they were taking notes. Now, maybe they were taking notes on the NAACP person before me. I don't know. But so after, this is a great thing about Arlington County is during these, anybody can talk about anything for 2 minutes, and then the chair responds to each one. And then each of the individual county board members have an opportunity to respond to any of the ones that they want to. And a lot of times they just say, well, that's a very important issue. Thanks for looking into it. Other people were talking about the tax issue, with the GBIP, we're talking about tax incentives for things. And several board members said, you can't do it because some of the people were coming and speaking to the board, say, oh, you should have variable tax rates for this or that, or defense contractors who give money to Israel or whatever. Anyway, and there are several county board members, including Maureen Coffey, were like, no, we can't do that because you have to have the same tax rate for everybody under Virginia state law. So that helped to clarify to me that it wasn't just staff saying that this is kind of board. Anyway, so I'll be happy to, and they were very friendly up front. They have 2 clerk staff people who were very helpful, and they check people in and whatever. So, and they respond to emails and respond to phone calls and stuff. So I think it is possible to figure all this stuff out, and I'd be happy to try to help anybody who wants to speak on a specific issue. Like if we had wanted to talk on River House, we could have signed, I think we're like 40 people signed up to talk about River House, and they get 3 minutes. Okay. So we could have been one of those 40. Would it have made a difference? I don't know. River House wasn't the one that we hated though.
No, it wasn't.
So
A lot of
anyway,
people
it's a
hate it,
process.
not us.
I'm happy to, I'm learning a little bit. I'm happy to try to help anybody. Clarity.
At the planning commission, I know people had trouble. They require you to sign up well in advance, and if you don't, you're out of luck. So that's a trap to get very.
I was just gonna mention to everybody else what I mentioned to you and Jen earlier, is that the new SPRC checklist has a glitch in the formula, and I don't know who owns it. Who owns it?
So I think I own it, but Henry, I think that you had a nice solve for one of the formulas where the calculation.
Yeah.
The roll where it rolls up the total percent.
Yeah.
Can you hear me all right? Or am I
Yes.
still not? Yeah. I can send you what I found, Katie. It's like you have to remove a couple of the cells. Some like when they did the formula, I think maybe they included a couple of cells by accident that shouldn't be in there. It's a pretty simple fix, but it tripped me up too when I was looking at it. I was like, wait a minute, it's all NA, but it's because there's a couple cells that shouldn't be in there.
Sophisticated than I am. If you
No, Katie, I was lucky. I was like, wait a minute, let me check the
But
formula.
if you could send it just to our email list, because
Okay, that's a good idea so that everybody has it. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Later. That'd be great. Thank you,
Yep,
Henry.
sounds good. Yep, no worries. Thanks.
The coming year.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's it.
Henry. I remembered that you did that.
Any more updates? 9 o'clock. So it's amazing.
Thank you.
Good year. Thanks. I hope you feel better. Yeah.